Just sign right here, on the dotted line, Dad, because we have already decided to forgive your selfishness, Freya said, sliding the heavy mortgage contract directly toward my calloused hands. The crackling firewood blew heat against the worn fingers of a 64-year-old cost estimator. I sat in silence, looking at my daughter and my son-in-law, Caspian. They were smiling. It was that cruel kind of smirk from people who believe playing the family card gives them a free pass to bleed my retirement fund dry. My finger brushed against the ice-cold pen. One signature was all it took to buy their company for Christmas Eve. But the price was swallowing an $18,000 invoice they'd just forged in Photoshop to fund a luxury ski trip in Aspen. If you found out the kids you loved most just viewed you as a walking ATM, would you turn a blind eye to buy some fake family warmth? Or would you personally let them taste real-world bankruptcy? Hit subscribe and drop your game plan in the comments right before I tell you exactly how I face those empty chairs. The wind coming off Lake Michigan had teeth today, biting right through my flannel shirt as I stood on the third rung of the ladder. I was fixing a loose gutter on the porch, a chore that didn't really need doing. But when you are 64 and living alone in a 4-bedroom Craftsman, you invent reasons to stay busy. It keeps the house from feeling too quiet. I checked my watch. 4:30. I had a pot roast in the slow cooker, enough for 4 people. Freya and Caspian usually found an excuse to bail on our Tuesday dinners, but my daughter had texted earlier saying she might swing by. I clung to that might like a lifeline. My phone buzzed in my chest pocket. I wiped my hands on my jeans and pulled it out. Freya's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, sweetie, you two still coming over?" I asked, already bracing myself for the letdown. "Dad, I can't. It's a total disaster here," Freya said. Her voice was breathless, tight with that familiar panic she always got when things didn't go her way. "The office is literally a swamp. A pipe burst or something in the ceiling, and it completely shorted out the whole HVAC system." I frowned, stepping down from the ladder. "A pipe burst? Have you shut off the main valve? I can be there in 20 minutes with my tools." No, don't do that," she snapped, a little too quickly. "We already have a guy here. The building manager sent him. He got the water stopped, but he says the entire heating and cooling unit is fried, irreparable. We have to replace the whole thing tonight or we can't open tomorrow." "Let me talk to him," I said, leaning against the wooden railing. 40 years of estimating construction costs meant I knew a thing or two about commercial HVAC units. "I want to hear exactly what's fried before you agree to anything." There was a muffled shuffling on the other end, a hand covering the receiver. Then Caspian's voice came through, smooth, measured, always trying to sound like the most reasonable guy in the room. "Thaddeus, hey, it's a mess over here. We're just trying to keep our heads above water, literally. The tech says it's a total loss. He can install a new rooftop unit, but he needs the cash up front for the equipment." "How much?" I asked. Caspian let out a heavy sigh, the kind that was supposed to convey deep reluctance. 18 grand. I know, it's insane. Freya's hyperventilating. We just sunk our last bit of operating capital into that new marketing campaign. If we can't open the doors tomorrow, we lose the Miller account. That's our biggest client." I looked at the front door of my house. The paint was chipping near the hinges. My late wife, Sarah, used to tell me I was too soft on them. "Don't let them treat you like an ATM, Thad," she'd say. But Sarah wasn't here anymore. And if I didn't help my daughter, who would? "Have the guy write up an invoice and email it to me," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "I'll wire the money from my retirement account. You'll have it in 10 minutes. "Dad, you're a lifesaver," Freya chimed in, back on the line. "I promise we'll pay you back once the Miller account clears. We're just so stressed right now. I love you." "Love you too, kiddo. Just get it fixed." I hung up, walked inside, and sat down at the kitchen island. 5 minutes later, an email from Caspian pinged on my phone. An attached PDF titled Emergency HVAC Replacement PDF. I opened it briefly. The logo at the top belonged to some local contractor I didn't recognize, total due $18,450. I logged into my banking app and authorized the wire transfer. By 6 o'clock, the house was dead silent. The smell of the pot roast made my stomach turn. I couldn't sit there anymore. I grabbed my coat, packed the dinner into a couple of Tupperware containers, and grabbed my keys. If they were working late dealing with a flooded office, the least I could do was bring them a hot meal. The drive to Evanston took about 20 minutes. Freya's PR firm was in a converted brick warehouse on the edge of the Arts District. It was a flashy place, lots of exposed brick and neon signs. The kind of place that looked great on Instagram but cost a fortune to heat. I parked down the block and walked up to the glass front doors. The lights were on, but the place looked perfectly dry. No fans blowing, no wet vacs in sight, no soggy carpets. I pushed the door open. The front reception area was empty. Toward the back, near the utility closet, a guy in stained Carhartt overalls was packing a set of wrenches into a canvas bag. He looked up when the door chimed. "We're closed, buddy," he called out. "I know, I'm Freya's father," I said, holding up the grocery bag with the Tupperware. "I came to drop off some food. Where is everybody?" "They took off about an hour ago," the guy said, zipping up his bag. "Said they had dinner reservations somewhere downtown." I stopped walking. "Dinner reservations? I thought the place was flooded." The repairman let out a dry bark of a laugh. "Flooded? Nah. The blower motor on the furnace just seized up. Bearings gave out. Made a hell of a racket, but that's about it. Not a drop of water anywhere." A cold knot formed in my stomach. I set the bag of food down on the reception desk. "You replaced the unit though, right?" "That's what they told me." "Yeah, slapped a new one in," he said, gesturing toward the open utility closet. I walked over and looked inside. It was a basic 3-ton Goodman residential unit. Standard sheet metal. Nothing fancy. It wasn't a commercial rooftop unit. It wasn't even close. I've spent decades staring at blueprints and material costs. My brain started crunching the numbers before I could even stop it. "You put a residential Goodman in a commercial space?" I asked, keeping my voice level. The guy shrugged. "Hey, it's what the guy with the fancy camera asked for. Said they were on a tight budget and just needed something to push hot air for the winter. It'll heat the place just fine. It's just not gonna last forever." "I see." I shoved my hands into my coat pockets, my fingers finding the cold metal of my keys. "What does a job like that run these days?" "Materials and labor?" The contractor slung his tool bag over his shoulder. I quoted them $3,000, gave them a discount on the labor since I had the unit sitting in my truck from a cancelled residential gig. Paid me in cash an hour ago, $3,000. I stared at the grey metal box humming quietly in the closet. $18,450. That was the number on the PDF. "You okay, pal?" the tech asked, looking at me sideways. "Yeah, I lied. Just tired. Thanks for your hard work. I didn't leave the food." I took the bag, walked back out to my truck, and sat behind the wheel for a long time. The streetlights flickered on, casting long, distorted shadows across the hood of my car. I tried to rationalize it. I really did. Maybe the contractor was running a scam on the side. Maybe Caspian had asked for a quote on a commercial unit first, got the $18,000 number, forwarded it to me, and then found a cheaper guy at the last minute. Yeah, that had to be it. Caspian was an artist. He didn't know how to handle contractors. It was a misunderstanding. I drove home on autopilot. The house was exactly as I had left it. Empty. Silent. I walked straight past the kitchen, past the cooling slow cooker, and went into the spare bedroom I used as a home office. I booted up my old Dell desktop, the fan whirred to life, sounding louder than usual in the quiet house. I opened my email. I clicked on Caspian's message. I downloaded emergency HVAC replacement BF to my desktop. I didn't open it to look at the numbers again. I already knew the numbers didn't make sense. Instead, I right-clicked the file icon. I scrolled down the menu and clicked on Properties. A small grey window popped up. I clicked over to the Details tab. When you do construction estimates for massive corporate bids, you learn how to verify digital documents. You learn how to check if a subcontractor is trying to alter a quote after the fact. The metadata never lies. It records exactly when a file was born and what birthed it. I stared at the screen. My eyes traced the lines of text. File type: PDF document created. Today, 4:12 p.m. application. Adobe Photoshop 2024 author. Caspian Linwood. The knot in my stomach turned to stone. There was no misunderstanding. No mix-up with the contractor. Caspian had designed the invoice himself. And my daughter had called me 30 minutes later, crying about a flood that never happened. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the monitor washing over my face. $15,000. Where did it go? The sun didn't really come up the next morning. The sky just turned a lighter, colder shade of grey. I sat at the kitchen island, a mug of black coffee going cold in my hands. Spread out on the granite counter in front of me were two pieces of paper. One was the phony $18,000 HVAC invoice. The other was the metadata printout I had pulled last night. Author: Caspian Linwood. I ran my thumb over the ink. When you spend 40 years estimating commercial construction costs, you learn that numbers usually tell a story. People lie, people exaggerate, but invoices and timestamps don't. Still, this was my daughter, my little girl. There had to be a missing piece, a reason that didn't end with her and her husband treating me like an easy mark. I wanted to be wrong so badly it physically hurt my chest. I opened my laptop. I didn't want to dig, but I couldn't stop myself. It's like finding a hairline crack in the foundation of a house. You have to know exactly how deep it goes before the whole structure comes down on your head. I logged into my banking portal. I had a joint credit card with my son, Gareth. It was supposed to be his safety net. He's 28, constantly hopping between freelance art gigs, still trying to find his footing. I paid the annual fee, kept the limit high, and told him it was strictly for emergencies. I clicked on the Recent Transactions tab, waiting for the page to load. I expected to see groceries, maybe a car repair or an unexpected medical bill. Instead, I saw a charge from United Airlines, $2,400. Booked yesterday afternoon. 2 round-trip tickets to Aspen, Colorado. I blinked, leaning closer to the screen. Below that was a pending charge for the St. Regis Resort in Aspen, $9,000. Followed by a charge for premium ski lift tickets. I checked the timestamps. The United Airlines flight was booked exactly 20 minutes after I wired the 18 grand to Freya's account. They were pooling the money. The HVAC crisis wasn't to save Freya's PR firm from going under. It was to fund a luxury ski trip for the holidays. A slow, heavy ache settled right behind my ribs. If Gareth had the cash to fly to Aspen and stay at a 5-star resort, what the hell was I paying his rent for? I was the legal guarantor on his lease over in Logan Square. $2 grand a month. The agreement was that he'd pay the monthly rent, but my name and credit were on the line if he ever defaulted. I hadn't heard a single word about rent issues, so I assumed he was working hard and making ends meet. I pulled out my phone and searched my contacts for the building manager, a gruff guy named Hector. I hit dial. It rang 3 times before he picked up. Yeah, management. Hector, hi. Thaddeus Winslow. I'm the guarantor for Unit 4B, Gareth Winslow's apartment. Just wanted to check if the radiators were holding up all right this winter. We had some issues with the cold last year. There was a pause on the line. I heard the scratching of a pen, then the squeak of a desk chair leaning back. Unit 4B? Mr. Winslow, your son hasn't lived in that unit since May. The kitchen felt suddenly very cold. Since May? Who's in there then? 3 college kids, Hector said, his tone shifting, getting a little defensive. Gareth sublet the place out. Said he got a job out of state. Look, if this is about the noise complaints, I already told them one more party, and they're out on the street. Sublet, I repeated. The word felt like ash in my mouth. Yeah, paying him a premium too, from what I hear. Wait, You're the guarantor on the master lease. You didn't know? I knew. I lied smoothly. The instinct to protect my family kicked in even now, overriding the shock. Just lost track of the timeline with the holidays coming up. Thanks, Hector. I'll handle the noise issue. I hung up and set the phone down carefully. 6 months. For 6 months, my son had been living somewhere else, probably rent-free with his girlfriend, and illegally renting out the apartment I was legally bound to. He was pocketing the rent from 3 college kids, taking the profit and leaving me holding the bag. As an estimator, I knew exactly what the risk was. If one of those kids left a space heater on and the building went up in flames, the landlord's insurance company wouldn't go after 3 broke 20-year-olds. They would come after the guarantor. They would come for my pension, my house, everything I owned. Gareth wasn't just lying to me. He was gambling with everything Sarah and I had built over 40 years, just so he could pocket a few extra $100 a month. And now he was using my retirement money to ski in Aspen with his sister. I walked over to the sink and poured the cold coffee down the drain. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white against the stone. I was a fool, an old lonely fool who bought into the illusion that paying for things meant I was still needed. Sarah always warned me. Thad, you can't buy their respect. Don't let them treat you like an ATM. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was keeping the family together after she passed. But they weren't acting like a family. They were acting like a cartel. And I was just the bank. I walked back to the laptop. I hovered my mouse over the lock card button on Gareth's account. My finger rested lightly on the trackpad. I didn't click it. Not yet. You don't start a war until you know exactly where the enemy is standing. Before I could close the browser, my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. It vibrated violently, skittering toward the edge. I looked at the screen. Freya. She was calling again. Less than 24 hours after the HVAC scam. I let it ring twice, taking a slow, deep breath, burying the cost estimator deep down and putting the clueless, loving father back on. Hey, sweetie, I answered, my voice perfectly steady. Did the heat kick on at the office? Dad, Freya sobbed. It wasn't a sniffle. It was a full panicked wail. Dad, everything is ruined. We're stranded on the side of the highway. Stranded? What happened? Where are you? I asked. I glanced at the laptop screen, looking directly at the United Airlines charge to Colorado. Caspian's car, she cried, her voice trembling over the line. The background sounded windy, like she was standing near traffic, but there was absolutely no engine noise. The transmission just blew. Smoke everywhere. The tow truck guy said it's completely totaled. Are you two okay? We're fine, but Dad, Caspian needs a car for his client shoots this week. We have absolutely zero cash left after the office repairs yesterday. The dealership says we need a 20% down payment for a new lease today, or he loses his biggest client. She paused. The silence stretched out, heavy and calculated. I knew exactly what was coming. Through the phone, I could faintly hear Caspian in the background. His voice was muffled, but I caught the words. Tell him we'll pay the interest, Caspian coached her. Tell him it's an investment. Dad, I know it's a lot to ask, Freya whispered, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. But the equity on your house, the mortgage is fully paid off, right? Could you maybe take out a small home equity loan, just to float us until next quarter? We'll lose everything if you don't. I stared at the St. Regis Aspen charge on my computer screen. They weren't stranded on a highway in Chicago. They were sitting in an airport departure lounge, trying to figure out how to pay for their room service and ski rentals. A mortgage, Freya? I said softly. Just a small one, Dad. Please. You're the only one who can save us. A mortgage, Freya? I said softly. Just a small one, Dad. Please. You're the only one who can save us. I listened closely. Through the static of the line, a muffled PA announcement echoed in the background. Passenger Linwood, please report to Gate B4 for final boarding. Freya covered the receiver a second, too late. I looked back at my laptop screen. The United Airlines charge. The St. Regis resort charge. They were literally standing in the terminal, getting ready to board a flight to Aspen, asking me to leverage the house I built with my late wife to pay for their room service. "I will have to look at the numbers, sweetie," I said, keeping my voice perfectly even. "A home equity line takes time. I can't just snap my fingers. But you'll look into it?" "Dad, you are the absolute best. I have to go. The tow truck driver is yelling at me. I love you." She hung up before I could say it back. I set the phone face down on the granite counter. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, pressing against my eardrums. I didn't feel angry. I just felt hollowed out. A tired old workhorse realizing the carrot dangling in front of his face was made of plastic. The next morning, the sky was a bruised purple, threatening snow. I drove down to the local Cheese branch on Davis Street. I sat in a glass-walled cubicle across from a young banker named Marcus. He had helped me set up Gareth's emergency credit line 3 years ago. "I need to freeze a secondary card on my account," I told him, sliding my ID across the desk. "The one ending in 4122. Marcus tapped away on his keyboard. "Done. Was it lost or stolen, Mr. Winslow? I can expedite a replacement." "Something like that. No replacement needed." Leaving the bank, I drove straight to my attorney's office in downtown Evanston. Bob was an old friend, the kind of guy who didn't ask unnecessary questions when you walked in looking like you hadn't slept in a week. I sat in his leather guest chair and handed him 2 copies of lease agreements. One for Freya's commercial PR firm, one for Gareth's apartment. "I need to formally withdraw as guarantor on both of these," I said, staring at the mahogany desk. "Effective at the end of the month. Serve the notices to the property managers and copy my kids." Bob adjusted his glasses, scanning the paperwork. He looked up, his brow furrowed. "Thad, you pull this pin, they are completely on the hook. If Freya's business doesn't have the operating capital to qualify for that commercial lease on her own, the landlord will demand a massive cash deposit or start eviction proceedings. Same for Gareth. Why the sudden shift? Gareth hasn't lived in that apartment for 6 months. He's illegally subletting it to college kids and pocketing the difference while I hold the liability." Bob sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I see. And Freya? Freya is doing just fine. Send the notices, Bob. I will get it done today. Just making sure you know what you are doing. This is a hell of a holiday present to give your kids." "It's not a present," I said, standing up. "It's an audit." 3 days passed. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garage, sorting through my tackle box when Caspian called. "Hey, Thaddeus," he said, sounding breezy and completely unbothered. "Listen, since you are floating us that loan," Frey and I were thinking, "the guest room at our place needs a fresh coat of paint before my folks visit next month. We already bought the cans, just need your magic touch with the rollers. Tomorrow work for you?" He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't ask if I was busy. He just handed out the assignment, fully expecting the free labor. I picked up a rusty lure, examining the bent hooks. "I can't tomorrow, Caspian." A beat of silence. "Oh, got a doctor's appointment or something?" "No, I'm going fishing." Caspian let out a forced chuckle. "Fishing? In late November? Come on, Thad, the paint is already mixed. It'll take you, what, 4 hours? We really need this done." I said no, Caspian. "Hire a painter." I hung up the phone. My chest felt tight. Saying no to my family felt entirely unnatural, like trying to breathe underwater. My thumb hovered over his contact name. I almost called him back to apologize. I almost offered to come over on Thursday instead, but I put the phone in my pocket and walked back into the empty house. The dominoes finally fell on Thursday morning. I was making a sandwich in the kitchen when my phone started vibrating violently off the table. Gareth's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, he called again. Then a text came through. "Dad, my card keeps declining. We are at a restaurant and they are threatening to call the cops. Unlock it right now." I didn't reply. I pictured him sitting in some 5-star lodge in Aspen, staring at a piece of useless plastic, suddenly realizing the bank of Dad was permanently closed. An hour later, Freya called. I answered on the third ring. What the hell is wrong with you? She screamed. No greetings, no fake tears. Just pure, unadulterated entitlement. Hello, Freya. Don't give me that calm voice. My property manager just emailed me a legal notice. You pulled your guarantor status? Are you out of your mind? Do you know how embarrassing it is to have my landlord ask if my company is going under? Are you going under? I asked. You told me you were completely broke on the side of the highway last week. That is not the point, she yelled, stumbling over her own words. I needed that backing. Caspian and I are trying to build a future, and you are actively trying to sabotage us just because you are sitting alone in that big house with nothing better to do. Gareth got his notice too, I assume. Yes. He is panicking. Why are you doing this? We are your children. I am doing this because my name and my pension are on the line and I have to protect my assets, I said, keeping my voice lower than hers. If your PR firm is as successful as you claim on social media, you won't need my signature. And Gareth hasn't lived in his apartment for 6 months. He is subletting it. I am not carrying his liability anymore. Total silence on the line. She didn't know I knew about Gareth. Or maybe she did, and she was just shocked I had finally checked the math. You are so selfish, she finally spat out, her voice dripping with venom. Mom would be absolutely disgusted with how you are treating us. You are losing your mind, Dad. You really are. The mention of Sarah felt like a physical blow to the ribs. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. Since you clearly don't care about anyone but yourself, Freya continued, her tone turning cold and absolute, don't bother setting a plate for us next week. We are not coming to Thanksgiving. None of us. You can sit there and eat your turkey all by yourself until you figure out how to be a father again. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. The house was dead quiet, the silent treatment. It was their favorite weapon, the one thing they knew always broke my resolve. They were banking on my fear of loneliness to force an apology. I stared out the kitchen window at the bare, shivering oak trees in the yard. A new message popped up on my screen. It wasn't from Freya or Gareth. It was from Caspian. Freya is in tears, Thaddeus. We are genuinely worried about your cognitive decline and erratic behavior lately. I am having my lawyer look into a power of attorney. Get some rest. Thanksgiving Day hit like a freight train. For 40 years, this house had been chaotic on the 4th Thursday of November. Sarah basting the turkey, the kids fighting over the TV volume, the smell of sage and melted butter baked into the drywall. Today the air was dead. I ate a frozen lasagna tray sitting at the kitchen island. The digital clock on the oven read 4:00 p.m. My phone sat next to my plate, a black, lifeless rectangle. Not a single text, not a missed call. The silent treatment. It was a hell of a weapon. I picked up the phone and opened my banking app. I had the power to end the silence right now. A $5,000 transfer to Freya's account, a text saying I was sorry for overreacting, and they would be knocking on my front door in an hour. I would have a family again. The house wouldn't feel like a tomb. My thumb hovered over the transfer button. My chest ached with a physical, heavy pressure. I was so damn tired of fighting. I looked up. On the mantel in the living room, Sarah's silver-framed portrait caught the afternoon light. She was smiling, that knowing, sharp smile of hers. I could almost hear her voice over the low hum of the refrigerator. Don't let them treat you like an ATM, Thad. I squeezed my eyes shut, swallowed the lump in my throat, and closed the app. I turned the phone off completely and shoved it into the junk drawer. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving night watching old westerns on mute. December rolled in, bringing a bitter, biting cold off Lake Michigan. The silence stretched from days into weeks. I kept busy. I re-caulked the master bathroom. I organized the garage. I didn't check Gareth's lease status. I didn't drive by Freya's office to see if the lights were still on. If they were drowning, they were doing it quietly. But I knew the math. Without my guarantor signature, The property managers would be squeezing them for massive cash deposits they absolutely didn't have. The clock was ticking. They were just seeing who would blink first. 3 days before Christmas, the sky opened up. The snow was coming down hard, burying the driveway faster than I could shovel it. I was sitting by the fire, nursing a glass of cheap bourbon, when headlights swept across the living room wall. I heard the crunch of tires, then car doors slamming. I stood up and walked to the window. Caspian's leased Audi was parked out front. The doorbell rang. I walked into the foyer and pulled the door open. Freya and Caspian stood on the porch, wrapped in expensive wool coats, their shoulders dusted with snow. Freya was holding a tin of grocery store popcorn, the cheap kind with the 3 divided sections. "Merry Christmas, Dad," she said. Her voice was soft, dripping with an overly rehearsed sympathy. I looked at the tin, then up at her. "Hello, Freya, Caspian." "Can we come in?" Caspian asked, rubbing his gloved hands together. "It's freezing out here." I stepped aside. They walked in, bringing a gust of cold air with them. They didn't take off their boots. They walked straight into the living room and sat on the leather sofa, looking around like they were inspecting the drywall for water damage. Freya set the popcorn tin on the coffee table. "We brought you this. We figured you were probably getting tired of cooking for one." "Thanks," I said, staying on my feet. I leaned against the brick fireplace, the heat warming the back of my legs. "What brings you two out in the snow?" Freya sighed, looking at Caspian. They exchanged a look, the exact kind of look 2 salespeople give each other right before they go for the close. "Dad, we have been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks," Freya started, her tone shifting into that pseudo-therapy voice she used when she wanted to control a narrative. "We know you've been struggling. Mum's passing. It's been hard on you. It's making you paranoid and honestly a little erratic. Pulling those leases, locking Gareth's card, that wasn't you." I took a slow sip of my bourbon. "It was me." "It was grief, Thaddeus," Caspian chimed in. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, playing the reasonable mediator. "Grief makes people do things they regret. You pushed us away. You tried to sabotage our livelihoods because you were hurting. We get it. We have actually talked to a counselor about it." I stared at him. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. They had forged a contractor's invoice to steal 18 grand, flown to a luxury ski resort in Aspen, and now they were sitting in my house diagnosing me with grief-induced paranoia. "Is that right?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Yes," Freya said, her eyes welling up with tears perfectly on command. "But we decided we don't want to carry this anger into the holidays. You are my dad. We forgive you." She reached into her oversized leather tote bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She unclasped it and slid a stack of legal documents onto the coffee table, right next to the popcorn. "What is this?" I asked. "It's a clean slate," Caspian said smoothly. "My business took a massive hit because I couldn't get a new car last month. Freya's landlord is threatening eviction next week because you pulled the guarantor status. We are in a temporary cash flow crunch because of your actions, Thaddeus. But we found a solution that fixes everything." Freya tapped the paperwork. "It's a home equity line of credit, just for 80,000. The house is completely paid off, Dad. You won't even feel it. We will make the monthly interest payments. You just need to sign as the primary borrower." They were fully cornered. The fake HVAC crisis was just the appetizer. Now they were going for the main course, trying to leverage the roof over my head to fund their illusion of success. "Just sign right here on the dotted line, Dad," Freya said, pulling a heavy silver pen from her purse and laying it directly on top of the contract. "Because we have already decided to forgive your selfishness." The crackling firewood blew heat against the worn fingers of a 64-year-old cost estimator. I sat down in the armchair across from them in silence, looking at my daughter and my son-in-law. They were smiling. It was that cruel kind of smirk from people who believe playing the family card gives them a free pass to bleed my retirement fund dry. My finger brushed against the ice-cold metal of the pen. One signature was all it took to buy their company for Christmas Eve. If I signed it, Freya would hug me. Caspian would call me a lifesaver. Gareth would probably show up tomorrow for a free dinner. The house would be full again. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. Freya's smile widened. Caspian let out a breath he had been holding, his shoulders dropping in visible relief. I looked at the signature line. Then I looked at the silver frame on the mantel. I put the pen down on the glass table. The quiet click echoed loudly in the room. Freya's smile faltered. "Dad, what are you doing? Just sign it." "I am not signing this," I said. My voice was entirely steady, stripped of any anger, grief, or hesitation. Caspian frowned, sitting up straight, the friendly mediator mask slipping. "Thaddeus, come on. We just went over this. We are offering you an olive branch here." "I don't need your olive branch," I said, reaching into the inside pocket of my flannel jacket. "And I don't need your forgiveness. But I do have something else for you." I opened the single drawer of the oak end table next to my armchair. My hand brushed against a thin manila folder I had placed there 2 days ago. I pulled it out and laid it on the glass coffee table, right next to their predatory home equity contract. Freya stared at the folder. Her eyes darted to Caspian. I opened the cover. I did not rush. I pulled out the first sheet of paper and slid it across the glass toward them. It was the $18,000 HVAC invoice Caspian had sent me. Next to it, I placed the metadata printout. $18,450, I said, my voice completely flat, slipping into the exact tone I used to negotiate with fraudulent subcontractors. That was the emergency fund you needed to keep the doors open. But the guy who installed the residential Goodman unit in your commercial closet only charged you $3,000. I know. I went there and asked him. Caspian shifted on the sofa. The smug mediator look vanished from his face, replaced by a tight, pale expression. Before either of them could speak, I slid the next 2 sheets of paper across the table. The bank statements. $2,400 for United Airlines. $9,000 for the St. Regis Resort in Aspen, booked exactly 20 minutes after I wired you the money. I looked up, meeting Freya's eyes. She was staring at the papers like they were radioactive. You were not stranded on the side of a highway, Freya. You were sitting at a departure gate. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the living room. The only sound was the crackle of the burning oak in the fireplace. I expected tears. I expected Freya to bury her face in her hands and apologize. But she didn't. She just sat up straighter, her jaw tightening, her eyes turning cold and defensive. "You went through our metadata?" Caspian asked, his voice dripping with sudden indignation. "You investigated us? What kind of father spies on his own kids?" "The kind who is asked to sign away his house to cover your lies," I replied. "It was a business trip." Freya snapped, her voice rising, completely abandoning the sweet daughter routine. "The Miller account executives were in Aspen. We had to be there to secure the contract. We were going to pay you back with the retainer, Dad. We just knew you would not understand the expense if we asked outright." "You forged a contractor's document," I said. "That is fraud, Caspian. If I take this to the police, you go to jail. If I take it to your landlord, you get evicted today." "But you are not going to do that," Caspian said, leaning forward, trying to regain his footing. "Because you are family. Look, Thaddeus, we made a mistake with the invoice. Fine, but we are drowning out here trying to build a future. You are sitting in a paid-off house with a massive pension, doing absolutely nothing with it. What is the point of all that money if you will not help your own flesh and blood?" I looked at them. Really looked at them. They weren't sorry they did it. They were just angry they got caught. They truly believed my life savings belonged to them. "That money," I said quietly, "is the blood and sweat of 40 years on construction sites. It is the money your mother saved by clipping coupons and driving a beat-up sedan for 15 years. You are not starting a business. You are acting like parasites. You are funding a lifestyle you have not earned. How dare you call us that? Freya stood up, grabbing her expensive leather bag. We came here to forgive you, to include you in our holidays. You came here for $80,000, I corrected her. I stood up as well. I was taller than Caspian, and I let my posture show it. I am done being your emergency fund. I am done being your free labor. And you can tell your brother that Hector officially served him an eviction notice yesterday for subletting Unit 4B. The liability is off my shoulders. Freya froze. The reality was finally hitting her. Without my guarantor signature, without my credit cards, they were completely exposed to the cold, hard math of the real world. You are going to let my company go under? Freya asked, her voice finally trembling, but not from sadness. It was pure fear. Dad, they will lock me out of the office on Monday. Caspian has no car. Then you better start walking, I said. I pointed toward the front door. Take your popcorn. Take your contract. And get out of my house. Do not ever use the word family to extort me again. They did not say another word. Caspian grabbed the popcorn tin and walked out. Freya lingered for a second, looking at me as if waiting for me to break, to pull her into a hug and tell her I was just kidding. I held her gaze, my face like stone. She turned around and walked out into the snow. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind them. The fallout over the next few weeks was exactly what the numbers predicted. Freya's landlord refused to accept a commercial lease without a guarantor or a massive cash deposit she did not have. She had to vacate the warehouse and move her PR firm into her cramped apartment living room. Caspian was forced to take the bus to his freelance gigs. Gareth was thrown out by the property manager and had to move in with his girlfriend's parents. They crashed into reality, and I did not write a single check to soften the blow. Now it is Christmas Eve. The snow outside is falling thick and heavy, blanketing the streets of Evanston in a quiet, glowing white. I am sitting by the fireplace, the heat warming my old bones. I have a glass of cheap, sharp bourbon in my hand, and an old Miles Davis record is playing softly in the background. The house smells like pine needles and wood smoke. I look across the room. The armchair opposite me is completely empty. There is no one here to ask me for money. There is no one here to complain about the food. There is no one here pretending to love me just to get a signature on a dotted line. The chair is empty. But for the first time since Sarah passed away, I do not feel lonely. I take a sip of the bourbon. I feel light. I feel entirely, wonderfully free. If you are watching this, and you are finding yourself constantly drained by the people who are supposed to love you the most, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Giving everything you have to people who do not respect you will not make them love you more. It will only make them respect you less. Love is not a transaction. You cannot buy a seat at your own family's table. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your adult children is to cut the financial cord and let them face the consequences of their own actions. It will hurt. It will feel like you are failing them. But establishing a boundary is not an act of betrayal. It is an act of self-preservation. Do not let anyone treat you like an ATM just because they share your last name. Reclaim your space, reclaim your peace, and do not be afraid of the empty chair. You might just find out that the silence is exactly what you needed to hear. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If this helped you, or if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please hit that subscribe button and share the video. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next one.